everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm actually going to be doing a book review for you, and so the book I'm going to be reviewing is The Queen of the Tearling by Erika Johansen. This book has sat on my TBR for far too long, and I finally read it when I was on vacation. And before we even talk about this book, first off, it's pretty. It's so nice. It's just so nice. It's got deckled edges, which I know some people hate, but I actually kind of like, and you can't even really see. It's got a little ribbon bookmark, and it's got interior art. I mean, it's just nice. The Queen of the Tearling is a heroic, high fantasy novel in this realm called the Tearling. Now, the Tearling is supposed to be in our world. It's some little place in our world that we discovered because there are references to America and to other places, and there's pop culture references in here like Tolkien and J.K. Rowling, who's treated as high literature, as she should be. The thing about the Tearling, in comparison to our world, is that it has reverted back to a kind of medieval times, and so medicine isn't really quite a thing, libraries aren't really a thing. There's a lot that has gone downhill in the Tearling. Our main character is a young girl by the name of Kelsey Glynn, and she is the rightful heir to the throne of the Tearling. She was sent away for her own protection when she was a baby and hidden away. She's known to be the queen because she bears the mark of a burned mark of like a sword on her, as well as she wears something that is known as the Queen's Jewel, or the Tear Jewel. It is this rather large and brilliant sapphire which she wears around her neck. Now, Kelsey, growing up in hiding, has always known who she was going to be. So we don't have to go through the whole process of, no, I can't possibly be queen. She's like, yeah, no, I'm queen. I'm going to have to leave this life that I love with my adoptive parents and go be queen. Which she doesn't really know how to do, and she's young. She's a teenager. She's got to go inherit the throne at the age of 19. So, older, which I actually thought was kind of nice. It was good not to have someone who was like 16 and immature. 19, okay, you're still kind of a teenage idiot, speaking from experience, just saying, but you're old enough that you can potentially make some very, very mature decisions. So the book starts out with Kelsey being picked up by the old Queen's Guard, who are coming to bring her in protective custody back to the capital, where she will take the throne from her uncle, who's been sitting as regent. The guards don't really like her, and she doesn't really know too much about what her mother was like or anything else like that, and it turns out that her mother didn't really have a great reputation as queen because she effectually got them into a war and surrendered in the war. There are several antagonists in this book who are on the side of small scale, because Kelsey has to go in and navigate the political waters of becoming queen and just having a lot of enemies. However, the main antagonist of this book is a woman known as the Red Queen. She rules the sort of nation that borders the Tearling, known as Mortmesne, and she is dangerous. Nobody really knows how old she is, but they know that she's clearly some kind of witch because she's been on the throne for like way too long and like hasn't aged, and she does not like the Tearling. She has invaded the Tearling more than once, and they have like steel weaponry that can just cut through everything else, and she's our main antagonist. She's also set up as our main antagonist that's, you know, over the arc of this trilogy or series is going to be our primary antagonist, and she's meant to be a foil to Kelsey, who's our protagonist. This book wasn't perfect by any means, but there were some things that I really enjoyed about it. First off is the whole idea of the political machine. Fans of Game of Thrones know that when you really do politics well in a fantasy novel, it gets fascinating. And this is another example of it being done really well. Kelsey comes in, she's 19. Yes, she has been brought up to be very bright and make lots of decisions and, you know, try and be a good ruler, but she has to start taking into account all of the consequences that come from her actions. First off, she completely ends this slave trade that is taking place between the Tearling and Mortmesne. So basically, it's very much like the story of the Minotaur, if you know, where in the story of the Minotaur, Athens had to send to Crete X number of girls and X number of boys every year as basically sacrifice. Effectually, the Tearling is doing the same thing. They have a lottery, they draw names, people go, and they are sold into slavery in Mortmesne. Kelsey is so horrified at this that she, right then and there, walks into the city and just ends it. I mean, she gets the people out and sets the cage they were in on fire. This is where we get a first glimpse of some serious magic, because this jewel that she wears starts to glow, and she sort of gets this power, and people sit there, look at her, and all of a sudden she's not like this 19-year-old girl who's coming in to try to be queen. She looked like a very strong woman and all these different things, and so we get a glimpse of magic. Magic isn't really explained in this book. I didn't expect it to be. It's the first book of a series, but it's the first glimpse we get of, okay, there's gonna be magic. Kelsey has something, and it's clearly involved with this Tearling jewel that she wears. Fun fact, the Tearling jewel also has a twin, so I'm expecting even more from that to come on and see what happens here. But she does things like that. She throws her uncle out, you know, in a huff. She offends a lot of people right off the bat who've gotten quite comfortable to how things were in the Tearling before she came in to take her throne, as was her right. Here's the thing about the Tearling, though. I think they make a point of mentioning a lot of times that it was basically diseased. It was really corrupt. So she's coming in and trying to end the corruption, but she's gonna have a huge battle ahead of her, and I like the look of that. And the way she goes about it, she does make some decisions that are quite sound, and she does always go to ask advice of older people and people who she trusts and people who basically tell her, you know, you may want to do this, but maybe you shouldn't. Her primary Queen's Guard, who's a guy by the name of Lazarus, but he gets called Mace because of the weapon that he uses, I believe he's the one who tells her, you are brave and reckless, milady. It's an admirable quality in a warrior, but not in a queen. And so he's like, you need to cool your temper, you really need to start using your head because these people will eat you alive and they will take you off this throne by force, by cunning, or both. I also love that Lazarus, for as gruff and really abrasive as he is sort of one of her biggest champions. He's really behind what she's trying to do, and he really does want to see her succeed, even though he knows she's going to make mistakes. Her other biggest supporter really is a thief who calls himself the Fetch. We don't know his real name. What's interesting about the Fetch is he comes in early in the story. He does basically just kidnap Kelsey and takes the twin queen's Tearling jewel, which I was like, oh shit, that's probably not good. He's a very enigmatic character. He does spark a little bit of, you know, as I say, primal lust, basically, in Kelsey. Can't blame her. I was a little attracted to the Fetch, too. He's very charismatic. What's interesting about the Fetch is he never shows his face. He always wears his mask. However, to Kelsey, he does show his face. And I thought that was really interesting. That's an interesting sign of odd trust. And he is definitely Kelsey's biggest champion, kind of behind the scenes, being like, I really want her to do well. I really want her to become the proper queen of the Tearling and rule well. So it's nice to see that there's these characters who, as much as sometimes they come up against Kelsey and, you know, do some things which are a little questionable, in the end, they're like, we want her to succeed. So we'll say hard truths, and we're going to have weird ways of going about it, but we want her to succeed. And they also leave it up to her to make the decision and then to stand by her decision. Awesome. As you can kind of guess, this book is much more focused on Kelsey growing as a leader and as a ruler and in her magic versus her getting involved in some sort of romantic subplot. I can't even begin to tell you how refreshing that was. I'm really sick of female main characters always getting involved in a romantic plotline. Not having one was, I swear to God, the best part of this book. Most of this book deals with the fallout that comes from Kelsey ending the slave trade, and it does basically mean that she sort of sparks a war with the Red Queen. And we do actually get some of the Red Queen's perspective. She's quite enigmatic and quite terrifying at times, so I'm really interested to see more of what comes out of that. All in all, this is a very character-driven story, and so while I can't always imagine the world, I really don't feel like I'm missing that much because the characters are so interesting. I want to know more about the characters and what they're feeling and what they're doing and how things are going to work out. I also want what is perhaps the biggest mystery of the book that everybody wants to know. Who is Kelsey's father? What I think is interesting is I think only one, maybe two people in the story admit to knowing the answer to that question, but Miss Johansen never tells the audience the answer, and literally every other character has no idea, and they all want to know. Now I have this sort of burning desire to know the answer to that question of who is Kelsey's father? Like, who was he? I've got some money betting on at least like 2 characters as to who it could be. Okay, maybe 3. This book had a lot of phenomenal action. The political intrigue, as I keep mentioning, is totally there. The characters are top-notch, and I'm very, very excited for the next book. I think you should definitely check this out if you're a fan of strong, dynamic, and complex female protagonists and antagonists, as well as fantasies kind of like Game of Thrones, which involve a lot of political intrigue and are more about characters and everything going on with them versus trying to set up a huge like magic system or anything. Don't get me wrong, I love my magic systems. After all, I read a lot of Brandon Sanderson. I love my magic systems. This isn't so much about the magic or the magic systems, it's much more about the characters. So that's it for me today, guys, and so until next time, cheers.